Step out of the car. Hands where I can see them. The voice was sharp, demanding, echoing through the stillness of a sunny suburban afternoon. Elijah Brooks didn't flinch. The man behind the wheel was calm, composed, and dressed in a tailored black suit that hadn't even wrinkled from the long day. His left hand stayed firm on the steering wheel. His right hand moved slowly, deliberately, toward his ID. "This is a federal vehicle, officer. I'm on assignment." But Officer Chad Rollins didn't hear anything after the word vehicle. His eyes had already made a judgment. Tall black man, clean SUV, no fear in his eyes. That, to Chad, was suspicious. Rollins curled his lip. "Oh yeah? What agency? Neighborhood Watch?" Elijah didn't take the bait. He simply reached for his leather wallet, opened it with practiced ease, and handed over his identification. No sharp movements, no sudden gestures, just experience speaking without a word. Rollins grabbed the ID, scoffed, then froze. His eyes flicked back to Elijah. His hand gripped the edge of the badge like it might burn him. "FBI? You're a federal agent?" Elijah gave one short nod. Measured, stoic. And just like that, everything changed. If you believe no one should be judged by the color of their skin, hit that subscribe button. And if you don't, maybe it's time someone checked your badge, too. Elijah Brooks was the kind of man who didn't speak unless there was something worth saying. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd been through storms and learned not to flinch at thunder. He was in his late 30s, though his stillness made him seem older. His frame was lean, fit, but not flashy. He had the kind of strength that didn't need to show off. Sharp brown eyes, clean-shaven, always suited, always steady. He grew up on the east side of Detroit, one of those neighborhoods the media only ever shows when something goes wrong. His father had worn combat boots and came home from overseas with both scars and silence. His mother taught kindergarten by day and love by night, holding a fractured family together with nothing but her voice and her prayers. Elijah learned early that people wouldn't always see him. They'd see a hoodie, a walk, a tone, never the man beneath. He pushed anyway. Top of his class at Quantico. 3 years working. Narcotics. 5 more undercover. He now served in counterterrorism. When the call came, he answered, no matter the time. No matter the threat. But even now, after everything, he still made time to visit his old block. Ran self-defense classes for young black boys. Not to teach them how to fight, but how to stand. Because standing, that's where it begins. On the other side of that badge stood Officer Chad Rollins. 40s, buzz cut, pale skin, jaw clenched like it was welded shut. Aviator sunglasses even on cloudy days. The kind of man who wore his badge like armor and his gun like punctuation. He came from a town with 1 stoplight and more flags than families. Became a cop because his father was one. So was his uncle. So was the uncle's best friend. Runs in the blood, he always said. But what really ran in Chad was something else. A simmering need to control, to dominate, to feel bigger than the man in front of him. He'd failed the detective's exam. Twice. Too many judgment issues, they'd said. He called it instinct. There were complaints. 5, to be exact. All from people of color. All dismissed. Insufficient evidence. Body cam malfunction. Unsubstantiated. But Rollins wasn't worried, because in his world, authority didn't have to explain itself. And if you asked too many questions, you were the problem. It started simple, as it often does. Elijah had just left the federal building downtown. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the pavement. He slid into the black SUV issued by the Bureau. Windows tinted, engine quiet, dash clean. He wasn't speeding, wasn't weaving, not even checking his phone. Just heading home after logging a 14-hour day monitoring a domestic threat task force meeting. 3 blocks in, he noticed the cruiser in the rearview mirror. Unmarked but obvious. A certain posture, a certain pattern. Staying close. Too close. Elijah knew the signs. He didn't tense up. Just let out a breath through his nose and kept both hands on the wheel. That's when the flash of red and blue lit up his rear view. Siren screaming like it had a vendetta. He eased over to the curb. Calm, controlled, a man trained to handle combat. Situations, now mentally preparing for a traffic stop in his own country. Rollins approached the window with his hand already hovering over the holster. "Roll your window down. Hands up where I can see 'em." Elijah followed instructions, without hesitation. "Yes, officer. May I reach for my identification?" "Do it slow. Real slow." The tension in the air didn't match the calm in Elijah's voice. Rollins leaned in, eyes scanning the interior. His gaze locked on the leather duffel on the back seat, the laptop bag next to it, the vest half covered by a jacket, government issued, stamped and tagged. But Rollins wasn't looking for facts. "What's in the bag?" His voice had that bite, accusation baked into the question. "Bureau equipment. I can have my supervisor speak to you if necessary." Rollins leaned in closer, face curling into a smirk. "Don't get smart with me." And just like that, it was no longer about procedure. It was about ego. Across the street, a jogger slowed down, sensed something wasn't right, pulled out her phone. A car passed. A kid in the back seat turned to his mother and whispered, "Mommy, why's the police officer yelling at that man?" She didn't answer, just locked the doors and kept moving. Inside the car, Elijah kept his voice even, his breath shallow. Because this wasn't his first time being mistaken for the wrong kind of man. Elijah's fingers rested near the steering wheel, unmoving, controlled. He knew not to make sudden motions, knew how quickly things spiraled when fear met ignorance. He kept his voice level. "Officer, I suggest you run the tags." Rollins rolled his eyes with the exaggerated annoyance of a man who'd already made up his mind. "Oh, we're doing that now? Let me guess. You're CIA too?" He chuckled at his own sarcasm. Elijah didn't blink, didn't smirk, didn't correct him. "Run them," he said again. Reluctantly, Rollins reached for his radio, Unit 9 requesting a check. Vehicle tag, Delta Tango Zulu 519er. A beat passed, then another. The air felt thick, heavy with everything unspoken. Finally, a crackle came through the speaker. "Copy, Unit 9. That vehicle is registered to one Elijah Brooks." "Yeah, he's right here." "Correction," the voice interrupted. "That's Special Agent Elijah Brooks, FBI Counterterrorism Division. Federal clearance confirmed." Silence. Rollins' grip tightened on the radio. His face went pale under the sun. The badge in Elijah's hand wasn't some novelty. It was the real thing. Elijah turned his head, slow and deliberate, and locked eyes with the officer. "You pulled a gun on a federal agent. You shouted orders. You assumed. And now you're realizing who you're really talking to." Rollins swallowed hard, but didn't speak. His hand drifted away from his holster. He looked around. The jogger was still recording. A few others had stopped too. Watching, waiting, witnessing. No sirens now, no orders, just the kind of silence that exposes the truth. The mask is off. The power has shifted. But the real fallout hasn't even started. A young voice broke the quiet. "Hey, that's the guy who helped my cousin." The jogger turned her camera toward the boy, black, maybe 16, still catching his breath from running. His voice carried, "Wait." Truth spoken without hesitation. "He's an FBI agent. My cousin got arrested last year. They were going to pin something on him he didn't do. That man, he showed up, told the truth, got the charges dropped." More heads turned now. Bystanders moved in closer, phones pointed, eyes wide. Rollins stood frozen, unsure whether to holster his weapon or hide behind it. Elijah stepped out of the SUV, slowly, deliberately. No sudden moves, no threats. He pulled out a second wallet, this one slim, leather, worn at the corners. Inside, A Department of Justice gold badge. The light caught it just right, glinting with silent authority. He raised it slightly. I didn't raise my voice, didn't resist, didn't reach for anything I wasn't asked to, and yet, here we are. He looked at Rollins. This could have gone very differently. I could have ended up bleeding in this street. And no one would have known who I was. Except you would have called it justified. The officer looked away. You didn't see a federal agent. You saw something else. Something you were taught to fear. Or maybe trained to control. The air shifted, thick with realization, the kind that makes people uncomfortable. You didn't see a man. You saw a threat. And now the question is, how many others have you done this to who didn't have a badge to protect them? The crowd didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They just stood still. Some with tears in their eyes. Some gripping their phones harder than before. Because Elijah wasn't just speaking to the man in uniform. He was speaking to something bigger. Something everyone there had seen before, but rarely named. This wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror, and everyone had to look into it. Elijah reached into his inner jacket pocket, not quickly, not carelessly, and pressed one button on a slim device clipped to his vest. That was all it took. Moments later, the hum of black SUVs filled the street. 2 government-issued vehicles pulled up with precision. Doors opened in unison. Out stepped 3 agents in clean-cut suits, each wearing mirrored sunglasses and tight earpieces. They didn't walk. They moved. The crowd parted. One of them, Agent Mills, walked straight toward Elijah. "Agent Brooks, we came as fast as we could. Are you all right, sir?" The use of sir wasn't missed by anyone. Rollins took an involuntary step back. Elijah didn't respond at first. He just looked at the crowd, at the people holding their breath. Then he turned toward the officer who'd pulled a gun on him minutes ago. "Tell me something, Officer Rollins. What did you see when I pulled off in that vehicle? Did you see a threat? Or did you just see something you couldn't control?" Rollins tried to speak, but nothing came. His throat worked around words that wouldn't form. One of the agents approached him now, calm but firm. "Sir, we're placing you under federal detainment for immediate review and questioning. You're being disarmed and relieved of your weapon." Rollins's mouth fell open. "Wait, what? You can't—" Elijah stepped in. "You pointed a loaded weapon at a federal officer during an active assignment, without cause. That's federal assault. That's obstruction. That's a career-ending mistake." The agent handcuffed Rollins, turning him toward the SUV. "You didn't ask who I was," Elijah added. "You didn't even care. You saw my skin and decided that was enough." The street was silent except for the soft click of the cuffs. No one cheered. No one needed to. Because justice didn't need applause. The authority Rollins hid behind, it vanished. And standing before him was a man he couldn't bully, couldn't control, and couldn't lie about. Rollins sat on the curb now, no longer posturing, no longer armed. His sunglasses had been taken, his badge and weapon collected, sealed, and tagged as evidence. The street had gone quiet except for the occasional click of cameras and murmurs of disbelief. A news van pulled up. Someone had called the media. Maybe the jogger, maybe someone else. Truth travels fast when it hits the internet live. One reporter tried to get close, but Agent Mills raised a hand. "No questions at this time. This is an active federal matter," Elijah stood a few feet away, shoulders straight, face unreadable. A local sergeant arrived, an older black man with silver at his temples and years of wear in his eyes. He looked at Elijah, nodded once, then turned to Rollins. "You've been suspended. Pending internal review, and considering the federal charges, you might want to call a lawyer who doesn't owe you favors." Rollins didn't speak. He just sat there, silent, cuffed, humiliated. And Elijah? He wasn't smug. He didn't smirk. That wasn't who he was. He stepped closer and looked Rollins in the eyes. "I won't press personal charges," he said, voice low, steady. "But I do have a request." Everyone leaned in. Agents, officers, civilians. "I want him to spend 1 week in my courtroom. No badge, no gun. Just a man in civilian clothes, watching the justice system he thought he understood. Watching how quickly it breaks people, especially those who look like me." The crowd nodded. Some muttered, "That's fair." Others, "That's real." Rollins blinked. It wasn't mercy, not really. It was exposure. Elijah didn't want revenge. He wanted truth to sit beside the man who couldn't recognize it and let it speak for itself. 1 week later, the courthouse was unusually full. People weren't there for the docket. They were there for the silence. The kind that came from watching a man who once barked commands now sit quietly in the back. Row, no badge, no power, no shield. Chad Rollins wore a wrinkled white shirt and slacks that didn't quite fit. His jaw was tight, his eyes tired. He didn't take notes. He just watched. Watched a single mother cry when her son was sentenced for a first offense. Watched a young man with no lawyer get buried by charges he couldn't spell. Watched how quickly. Hands went from pockets to cuffs when no one stood up for the ones without titles. Elijah never looked at him during court. He just did his job. Sharp, precise, measured. But each time a sentence fell heavy. Each time a plea deal felt more like surrender. Rollins sank further into his seat. On the 7th day, court adjourned early. Elijah was gathering files when he noticed Rollins still sitting there, shoulders slumped, eyes not on his phone, but on the floor. He didn't move until Elijah passed by. "Agent Brooks." Elijah paused, turned. "I didn't know," Rollins said, almost choking on the words. "I never saw it like that before." Elijah studied him. No gloating. Just a quiet weight behind his eyes. "That's the problem," he said. "You never had to." He didn't wait for a reply, just kept walking, because some lessons don't need to be explained. They need to be lived. Emotional payoff. This was more than punishment. It was perspective, and it came without force, only truth. Some stories don't end with a bang. They end with a breath, a slow, steady exhale after the storm passes, leaving behind what can't be ignored. Elijah Brooks didn't win a battle. He didn't crush a man. He didn't need to. He stood still. And the world finally turned to see what he had been seeing his whole life. We live in a time where a badge can protect or destroy, where assumptions can draw weapons faster than facts. But every now and then, the truth walks into the room wearing a suit and a badge of its own. And when it does, it doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It simply stands and demands to be seen. This wasn't about a traffic stop. This was about every time a black man has to explain he belongs. Every moment someone sees threat instead of humanity. Every assumption that could cost a life before a word is spoken. But today, the mirror was held up to the system, and for once, it had to look back.